All right, welcome to the Underdog Ecom podcast, where two ecom brand founders are figuring out in real time.
Yeah, we're not here to preach. We're here in the thick of it, making mistakes, testing all sorts of ideas, and really sharing the journey of how we've been growing these brands from day zero. Hopefully you learn a little bit, perhaps come away with some ideas that save you time and money. And so if you're tired of the same glittery D2C advice from those 9-figure gurus, you're here in the right place.
Let's get into it.
All right, we're here, episode 13. We are going to hopefully keep this on the shorter side. Basically, we've been talking offline a little bit about bid caps, and so we're coming at you live about Facebook ads, the engine that fuels most of our businesses, that helps Zuck buy his private island with a 30-foot underground tunnel to hide from the zombie apocalypse. But Jack and I have been talking through this because it's something that we've both been trying in our businesses. And so we want to have sort of a more of an open dialogue discussion with all y'all about it. We're definitely not experts. We're figuring it out as we go, as always. And so it's been something that has been on the top of our mind as we try and figure this out. So basically, to recap a little bit what everyone missed while we were not recording, basically, I started running bid caps. And I've played with different campaign structures in the past. I think I've tried most of the different structures in general. And recently, as of a week or two ago, I started running a bid cap campaign, and I set it up specifically under sort of the philosophy that Matthias Schroeder, I think his last name is, I can't remember off the top of my head, has shared on Twitter about. He's the guy that founded Clio, which is a pretty cool analytics tool that's cheaper than for the rest of us than Lifetimely. And I really like it. I've been using it since he nearly launched it. And so it's been helpful to focus on profitability and the numbers and dig into everything via that tool. But he tweeted a popular tweet a while ago that talked about his exact philosophy about running Facebook ads and doing it on math using bid caps. And so I instituted this campaign where I've got different ad sets set up for my different product categories. Only 2 right now, but I'm going to set it up for other collections later. And specifically, the bid cap is set up at the profitability number as suggested for that particular product collection in Clio. And so the idea is you maximize your profit because it's only going to fire when it can acquire the customer profitably. Now, the downside to this is you're not spending. I mean, it's a good thing that you're not spending cash when you're not spending cash, but also I have spent less than $10 on this campaign in the last couple of weeks. And that's hard because I need to make sales. And I know that, you want to make sales when they're profitable. That's definitely ideal. But I think there are some drawbacks to this approach as we walk through it and try and figure out like what makes the most sense for the business. Ultimately, I definitely want the business to be profitable. I want to make ads and run ads that are profitable, that may have the most return. All of that makes sense, I think, on a high level, but at the level my brand is at, when it's less than 7 figures, maybe on track to hit 7 figures this year, I don't know. It seems like if I were to put all of my eggs in one basket of this bid cap strategy, my spend would be like nothing, but also it seems like my revenue would be extremely low, and my fixed costs would basically overtake the business in terms of cash flow. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with it all. I'm not and like right now I've got some other highest volume campaigns that are running. I remember Nate Lagos was talking about this a while ago, I think in one of his pods or maybe just on Twitter, where he was talking about predictability being really important in business. So if you're looking at your business and you're running it on highest volume, you're saying, hey, I'm spending $100 a week on ads and I'm getting $300 in sales. Based on my margins, this is what profit looks like. Like based on historical performance, I can predict that these numbers will be roughly the same going forward. And so this is what happens when I start to turn different screws on the business. And that's really helpful when you're running a business because you know what it's going to be. When you're doing bid caps, it seems like so far it's very hit or miss. And I think that I could improve some of my ad sets in my campaign. So I'm going to try other product categories, other collections, and see if something else will hit better. But so far I've been very mystified with how it's supposed to work out, especially to cover all the fixed costs and everything. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think like what I was also saying off air, I think is that I think bid caps goes against a little bit how you think about traditional marketing, in the sense that you kind of assign a budget, and you kind of you to like a activity. You know, traditionally it might be in print advertising or something like that, and you kind of see how that budget has done, and that those kind of marketing activities have a bit of a halo effect as well, that over the course of time, you know, I think time short-term profit is, I'm just playing devil's advocate for a moment here, because like short-term profit, I can understand where, you know, and it's not just Matthias. There's a lot of people out there who really at the moment are very, you know, on this, especially with e-commerce, I think, where we're, you know, it's maybe for other companies, it's not such a big deal. For us, maybe it is more. But I think where a lot of the side they're coming from is that if you lose money on a sale, and you not only have you lost the product, but you've also like you're actually losing money, like you're losing money on that sale versus versus if you didn't spend on that sale, you've also still got the product, you know. So almost like, it's almost like you're like a double whammy when you lose on a sale, because you've spent the money and you've also lost on the sale. So like you've lost the product as well. So like that selling opportunity is gone for that particular unit, and of course you've got a limited number of units. And I can understand the philosophy, because a lot of what, you know, you and I in the situation we've got into is, with a lot of times, is that we have to refinance getting more inventory in, which is obviously not a situation we want to be in, because then that, you know, that finance costs money, it then eats into your margins even more. And I completely understand the concept of that, because it's a real problem we have. We you know, we struggle to fund the next inventory cycle. And the argument is like, what is the point of having buying inventory earlier only to not be able to afford it, right? Because you've sold through your inventory at a loss. Like, I can understand that. On the other side of things, like where I also stand is that at our size, it's not very easy to just go profit mode only, because we're very small, and our fixed costs in relation to our top line revenue are actually quite close. Like, relatively speaking, obviously it's not that close, but relatively speaking, in comparison to other brands, you know, that as you get bigger, generally your fixed costs are not going to rise in relation to your top line revenue. So I think what we struggle with is that our fixed costs in relation to other bigger 7-8 figure brands do have a much closer sort of distance between our fixed costs, and therefore when we drop our total sales, we start dipping into those fixed costs. And that's where I struggle a lot as well. And I think going back to like traditional marketing side of things, is that there's this halo effect. And so when you want people to know about your brand, you want people to be aware, and like the more people just, you know, that are aware of your brand, the more chances there are for sales to come in the long term. And then and sometimes it can, like, that short term thinking can also impede like long term sales when it comes around to things like Black Friday and stuff like Christmas time, where people are, you know, looking to buy, and they may not have been at that time, but you kind of did the work up until that point to kind of build that kind of almost like the, you know, they talk about, you know, squeezing the lemon sort of thing, where if you don't if you don't refill it, you know, then you, or that, you know, you basically squeezing the lemon dry, and then you don't have that. Or squeezing the sponge, if you don't refill the sponge, then you kind of have struggle when it comes time to actually, you know, convert those customers. So I think it, especially with brands our size, is a difficult one.
Yeah, I definitely want to be focused on profitability, and that's been something I've been working on the last month. And I think it's a really good idea, and the concept is there. And it's like, it is, ecom is really hard as it is. Like, you know, it's been a struggle, and I like that about it in terms of a collective spirit of ganging up together, sort of to solve the ecom puzzle. And I want the bid caps to work, because I really like the idea, and I think that there's always, it seems like everything is kind of different for every business. And I think that sometimes, you know, there's multiple variables that are going into my equation. Like, for my specific case, I'm going to try other products, because it's entirely possible, and probably the case, that some of the products that I'm advertising in these bid caps aren't as desirable as like other ones that people might really, really want. And so, and also it's the margins themselves. Maybe the margins themselves aren't conducive enough to advertising to acquire customers for those specific products. Totally possible. And so there's a bunch of different factors here, and I'm definitely going to keep trying. I think that's kind of been our motto here on the show, is basically, you know, we're learning in public in a lot of ways and figuring this out as we go. Definitely not experts. And so to try and figure this out and solve it as it makes sense it'll be an evolution. We're not coming here with it already solved. It's like, we're figuring this out as we go. And so hopefully, you know, I can come back in a couple weeks and say, hey, I tried these other products, I tried these other ads. You know, that's another aspect to it. I think that ultimately, when it comes to marketing, there's too much focus especially in the D2C world, on like what's the campaign structure that's going to work the best or whatever. Like I think that's not the most important thing. It's product market fit. I think that's like the number one thing. It's like, hey, does someone actually want to buy this? Because it doesn't matter if it's a bid cap or a cost cap or highest volume. If they really, really want it, it's going to work. And so it's, I think in the past I've got very distracted with like setting up all sorts of different complex campaigns and all sorts of different things in Facebook Manager, but it seems like there's definitely been a push over the last X amount of time, year or two or whatever, to consolidate things, keep it more simple. Facebook is obviously streamlining a lot of the tools and the different options, so it's more focused on like make good stuff that people want and make ads that people show that off really well and do well from an ad perspective, and things will work. And so I'm also like, I I think I came across strongly as like, oh, these bid caps are terrible and they're not working. But it's not necessarily the bid caps. A lot of times it's the product or the margin or the ad. And so those are things to be worked on from my point of view, and I'll figure it out as I go.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think, and just to add to that, what I think as well is that it may not be a good product for Facebook ads, right? It may not be the right product, or it may not be the product that you should be pushing so hard in Facebook ads, right? It might the one that's going to get the most spend, or or has the margin to spend. Because that's another thing. Like, I mean, if you're very lucky and you've got a lightweight product that's very expensive that costs very little to ship, like you may have the margins to do lowest cost and just scale to the moon because your margins are just ridiculous, right? So I think it certainly seems that Facebook favors certain types of products in terms of not like specifically, but in terms of like how the margins work out. I think it does. And I think we talked about how we're learning as we go along. I think one thing I'm trying to do, and certainly not easy, I think Facebook obviously is the biggest room for scale, but is at least from that top of funnel, just trying to find other ways top of funnel to kind of build awareness and things. And so some of the things I'm starting to do a bit more as well is some of the like reviewers or YouTubers or say influencers that we've worked with in the past that we have seen things work with, go back to them and say, how would you feel about doing something monthly? And so as opposed to that $1,000 or $500 or $200 a month, whatever you decide to pay them, depending on how many sales they've brought in the past, maybe I could put something that, that I would have put that into ads, I would give to them. And so like still spending on ads, but maybe just kind of looking and saying, well, maybe I can do top of funnel from other sources, and maybe like I can have like a banner on their site, or like a mention in like 1 or 2 YouTube videos a month, or whatever it is, which is obviously what other brands are doing, so so I'm not saying it's definitely going to work, but it's something I'm trying, because I'm just going to think if I can try and build in some more top of funnel somewhere, then maybe things like, maybe I can get more like people, through email, and I can also, maybe the bid caps and cost caps have, they're more of a pool of people they can work from, and all that sort of stuff. So I guess that might be part of the equation as well.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. There's always I've seen this. There's always been a ripple effect when things happen, and I think that like if there's a lot more eyeballs on the brand and a lot more top of funnel awareness via other channels, then it's very possible, and it's happened to me, where the ad account itself will be lifted and the numbers will be better and things will just kind of improve. And I've seen that specifically when I've had like a really good ad run or a really good product drop. In general, things like overall increase, like there's more orders for other things, and it's sort of like the rising tide lifts the boat sort of feeling. There's a huge focus on Facebook, and I think that's a good there's good reason for that. I think it is the primary channel for 95% of brands out there in the D2C world. Like you can go forever almost, it seems like. The bid cap thing, I think it's a good idea. I'm just like, I don't know if it works for, like you're saying, like the really small brand that's going from 0 to a couple million a year or something. Like maybe when you get to that point where it's a couple million a year or more, and you want to sort of hedge your profitability and focus a little bit more on that, like that might be the point where you've got enough surface area where people have been aware, and enough people in the funnel, top of funnel land, where they're kind of are aware that it might work, and there's enough history in Facebook Manager maybe to also have their algorithms know who to target and know where to send it. Like all of those things probably lean towards that being a better testing time. We'll see. I'm intrigued to, when I get to that point, like to definitely test it a little bit more and focus on it and see what'll happen.
Yeah, and one thing I thought might work for you, I mean, I know sometimes like diversifying these things can sometimes be more effort than it's worth, and you can just be more of a distraction. So with that in mind, I do sometimes want, like, I do think maybe like like live shopping with TikTok or something like that might work quite well for you in terms of like some of that behind the scenes content. I think we talked about on the previous episode, like doing that just like live when something comes in, like something new comes in, and doing like a live stream of it and it comes in on TikTok Shop I think could work really well for you. I don't know whether it's going to work for us because of our like average order value and things. I just don't know whether TikTok is going to work, and I think I need to obviously try it, and put effort into it. And I think sometimes it's hard because we're small, we haven't got that many people, and so, or any at all, and so it's really hard to put a lot of effort into a certain channel. It's a bit like Google Ads. I've not spent any money this year or anything on Google Ads because like I just not really made it work. And I mean, apart from I've done branded in the past and stuff like that, but like I've always just come back to thought, well, maybe I think probably better off putting that into Meta. So I mean, with that caveat in mind, I do sometimes think maybe something very different, like maybe live shopping with TikTok, might be something where it's not going to replace all your all your revenue from Meta, but it's just something to kind of like maybe just bring in some like more additional profitable sales, I guess.
There's like focus. We've talked about this before, but it's like there are so many different things, and it's kind of like
Yeah.
focus on what works, and then like really narrow down on that and try different things. But there's so many different things to try. I actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I've thought about that too, and I set up the TikTok shop a week or two ago or something. Ran into a huge amount of issues syncing up products. It just like wasn't working, which it sounds like is very, very common. Some dude from a Slack group jumped on a call with me and helped me out
Oh wow.
debug some of the issues, and that was really helpful. And so I got more stuff synced up. There was some takeaways from that process was like make sure everything is filled out on the product profile, including the Shopify suggestions for their meta fields and that stuff. I don't have everything synced up. Some of my popular products aren't that on there yet. And so I've only just started like experimenting with like all of the creator type tools. I mean, it feels like a whole nother like realm that I haven't dug into a whole lot in terms of like, all right, I got to learn how to do collabs and creator seeding and all this stuff. Yeah, I like that live idea. I've been trying to focus on it a little bit over the last year or so. And by focus on it, it's kind of like create some videos that hopefully do well and put them out there. Like I've been doing on Instagram and TikTok, and I've grown the account to like, it's not big, like 800 followers for the brand. So, but I'm seeing more consistent following when I do a video like a day or whatever it is, or a video every couple days. And so I like that idea of doing the live thing, doing more behind the scenes. A couple months ago, I did a free hat giveaway, which was really fun. It was the week before Black Friday, so I wanted to kind of fill the funnels a little bit and have some fun. And I sent that out as a sort of a promo. And so I remember being in the warehouse live watching all the people log in to try and get because there's a limited quantity, trying to get the free hat. And I could see something like that, just that sort of like live experience of watching something cool happen, unfold in real life could be pretty cool, especially with like a new drop or something like that.
Yeah, I also think that your ad strategy, specifically with Meta, can sometimes depend on how dependent you are on it. So like I've met a few
Mm.
people with brands that kind of sell into retail, or like a lot, like maybe like CPG brands, things like that, sell a lot into retail, and they sell into like Amazon a lot and stuff like that. And so they don't care quite as much of the ROI on Meta because it's almost like
Mm.
that's not their main source of revenue. Obviously, they want to improve Meta revenue, but if they're having a bad month, they can stop spending on ads, and they've got revenue coming through like from their main sources still. And so their approach to the whole thing is very different, and so, or they can maybe take some bigger swings with it because again, they're not so dependent on it. When you are very dependent on it, there's benefits in the sense that you can scale up or down, but the same, and you can control that, and it's not like you're not hoping a supplier doesn't just like cut you out, or like a retailer doesn't just cut you out from one month to the next, which is obviously a problem, probably weighing on a lot of those brands' minds. But at the same time, when you are fully dependent on it, like making one move one way or another can have a massive impact. Like versus like if your spend goes down to minimal amounts because of something that you've changed, that can affect your whole kind of like sales funnel sort of thing. And so I think that kind of impacts things as well a lot. And sometimes I'm jealous of people who can like who just don't have quite as much dependence on Meta, because I think they can try things out, or things can't work out the way they wanted, and it doesn't impact them quite the same way.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Like the diversification of channels is nice when it happens. And you kind of have like, oh, I've got this backstop to sort of fall back on if Facebook meta ads are not just not working at all or whatever it is. Sort of insulates the business a little bit from having too much risk in one area. Although it's like when it's just focus. It's like all these different things. There's a lot of things to pay attention to, and sometimes it kind of feels like keeping plates spinning. Like we talked one episode about wholesale, and like I've had a good amount of wholesale for my brand. I think at one point the numbers was like 30 to 40% of revenue is wholesale. It has dropped off quite a bit, I've noticed, specifically from like one of my biggest accounts, and it's just been like hard to try and solve along with all the other things that are going on. Like, why has this dropped off? Fortunately, it's not the only channel, but also it would be really nice to have that backstop of big orders coming in because wholesale is big numbers in terms of like the actual order values. But just something to solve as always.
Yeah, I think there's always a for and against all this type of stuff, right? So I mean,
Mhm.
if I think about something like True Classic, where I mean they're selling T-shirts at the end of the day, you could if you looked at that brand when they first started, you'd say like that is going to be a hassle on Meta just selling like it's not like there's not even like anything particularly like relevant, culturally relevant, or
Yeah.
they're not selling. You know, they haven't got they very much started with just like a white T-shirt with like very little kind of like design or anything like that.
Mhm.
And you could say like, you know, are they how are they going to continue to scale on Meta? Like, um, but they've they're a huge brand and they've done it by
Mhm.
focusing entirely on Meta, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I know you sell T-shirts as well, so I'm not saying I'm not saying like you, but like you have a much like more brand story. Like there's a lot more like design behind it. There's a lot more cultural relevance. You have various different SKUs. I mean, like they literally just went in with like a white T-shirt and then like
Yeah.
that fits a bit better, and they've managed to scale it massively, and with just focusing on Meta as well. And I think that's a good
Mhm.
example of like you can be like laser focused on a certain channel and make it work. So like I'm not
Mhm.
it's that's what I'm saying. There's for and against for all this type of stuff.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Before we wrap, I can't remember. Did I ask you about your like bid cap experience so far? Going back to bid caps?
Yeah. So going back to big caps, I mean, so yeah, I had a campaign which the other thing is, I mean, this is where it gets into all the structure sort of stuff, but like I set up a big cap campaign that seemed to be doing fairly well. We got a few sales in, like maybe 10, which actually is for a bid cap over like a course of like a week or so. It was actually like quite refreshing. But it had like 7-day click, 1-day view as the attribution setting, which basically means that like I think is it just attributing sales from previous like campaigns that were doing lowest cost or highest volume sort of like and then just taking like all those bottom funnel sales and eventually it was going to cap out. But I ended up setting up a new campaign as per Matthias's suggestion that was like 1-day click, and that thing is just not spending. I mean, like I say it's not spending, it's spent. I mean, I've got like a high daily budget on this thing, and it spent in the last week almost $42 and no sales, right? And I've also got like a
Mhm.
target ROAS campaign in there as well on ASC, which is spending more. Like it's already spent more,
Mm.
but it's not spending that much more. Like it's still on like
Mm.
$77. So like when you look at this stuff and you're not seeing the sales come in, it hurts because you're just thinking like, how long can I
Yeah.
hold this for? It's a tough
Yeah.
one.
That's true. That's intriguing. I have 7-day click, 1-day view, whatever like the more less aggressive attribution settings on my bid cap,
Yeah,
and it spent $4. And so I'm like, well, if I make that 1 day, it's gonna spend like nothing. Um, and the target ROAS campaign is interesting. Like I've thought about doing that ASC target ROAS as well. All this cost controlled stuff. I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard to know like what's right, and it's kind of like yeah, you kind of have to test and play with things. And I'll have to test with new products to see what's going to work product wise because that's another variable in the equation. Just it's test and figure out what works, and then hit the gas pedal, I guess.
yeah, and like I've even got a friend actually who's doing this as well, and like this in supplements, and he told me he was doing this, and I mean even they're spending like 50 grand a month on lowest cost. They put in cost cap and
Mm,
they've spent maybe like less than 100, right? So
mm,
even they are
mm,
doing fairly good volume on in terms of total sales, huge amount of like pixel data coming through, and
mm.
they haven't made it work. So I mean, not to say they're doing it perfectly well, and they you know, there's a whole lot of it is like the whole coming up with new ad concepts, all that sort of stuff, and I completely understand that, and probably not doing it to the extent you have to make it work. But still, I think it is a really tough strategy.
Yeah, it's like obviously focused on profit, which is ideal, but also perhaps hard. But also is the grand question that Facebook's telling us: does this product slash brand slash ad make sense? Should you be
Yes.
this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Zuckerberg, you know all. You know all.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I've got on bid caps, I think. Do you have anything else to chat about there before we wrap?
No, I think it'd be good to catch up again and see where we've managed to spend another dime or two in a week in a couple of weeks. But yeah, it's been good to chat about this one.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I like the idea behind it, but so far, no dice. I'll keep hammering though. That's the strategy. Cool. All right. Well, thanks y'all. Leave us a review, 5 stars on all your platforms. Drop some comments. Are bid caps working for you? Cost caps. What are you doing? Highest volume, lowest volume, or are you just hanging out?
Door to door.
Twizzlers. Door to door. Oh man, that's a whole other pod. But like door to door drives me crazy. Anyways, all right. Cheers.